Rolex is indeed known for precision, quality, and elegant watch faces. But apart from that, what is it that makes this brand unique? Did you also know that only a few people know the origin of Rolex? Unlike other luxury brands whose owners are constantly in the news for one reason or the other, hardly do people know who the founder of Rolex is. Perhaps this secret is the reason Rolex has been around for more than a century, with only a few other watch companies contending with it for the #1 spot. In this video, we'll talk about the founder of the genius behind Rolex, how he started the company, and the current status of the company. This video is sponsored by Sky is the Limit. When asked, an average person is likely to say the founder of Rolex is Swiss. The reason for this is not far-fetched. It's because Switzerland is the home for watches, and as a result, people can't seem to embrace Rolex's founder being of a differing nationality. The founder of the Rolex brand was not named Rolex, and even though he took his business to Switzerland at some point in order to be closer to his employees and manufacturers, he was never Swiss. Hans Wilsdorf was of German descent. He was born in Kulmbach, Bavaria, to Johann Daniel Ferdinand and Anna Wilsdorf on the 23rd of March, 1881. Hans was from a family of 5, and the second among his siblings. Wilsdorf's family was fairly well-to-do, and it showed in the way they took care of their children, but all that soon changed when Hans's mother, Anna Wilsdorf, died of an unknown ailment in 1892. To lose his mother at a tender age was already a great tragedy, but life wasn't done dealing with Hans. In 1893, just about a year after his mother's demise, Hans became a complete orphan at just 12 years of age, as his father also died. With both his parents gone, Hans and his siblings were at the mercy of their parents' relatives. In the end, Hans and his siblings were taken in by their maternal uncle, who decided it was best to sell off what was left of his parents' business and use the proceeds to pay Hans and his siblings' tuition fees. To this displeasure, Hans was sent to a birding house. With his father and mother gone, he felt like a fish out of water and almost fell into depression. After a while, he realized his parents weren't coming back no matter how much he wished for it. He decided to suck it up and face his studies. Hans excelled in math and languages. In no time, he had picked up English and French in addition to German, which was his original language. In this school, Hans met a Swiss boy of his age. The boy told him of his country, Switzerland, a place where wristwatches are made and exported to the rest of the world. Hans was so fascinated that he could have left school to visit the wonderland that his friend had described, but he was only a boy, and there was a limit to what he could do. The poor orphaned boy would eventually leave school to forge his path. But before we get into that, let me ask you this. Have you heard about Sky is the Limit? It's a high-end fashion brand that caters to those who love quality sneakers. You can check in the description section below for more info after the video. In 1890, at the age of 19, Hans left school to see what the world had in store for him. His first point of call was Switzerland, the country his school friend had told him so much about. When he got there, he joined a pearl distributing company as an apprentice. The company wasn't manufacturing watches, but he stayed regardless. What the company did was import pearls, repackage them, and distribute them to their customers, both within and outside the company. Perhaps Hans would have left seeing that the company wasn't doing what he was interested in, but he realized the company was making tons of money. This intrigued him and made him pay more attention. It dawned on him quite early that he needed to learn the skill of selling and marketing no matter what he chose to produce. Hans remained in this company until he got a letter from his friend. Remember the friend who told him about Switzerland in the first place? Yes, he got an invitation letter from him to join his family business. The company was called Kuno Korten. The company made high-quality watches that were in high demand from far and near. For the first time in what seemed like an eternity, Hans felt he had finally found his calling. Kuno Korten, at the time Hans joined, was already making and selling 1 million watches. There he learned the technicalities of making watches and how to package them. At this point, he knew what he wanted to do with the rest of his life. However, he also knew his training wasn't over. After a few years, he moved to another company where watches were being manufactured. At this company, he was given more responsibility, and this only prepared him for the future. Hans was enjoying his role in the new company when he was called back home in Germany to serve in the military. He honored the call but he soon left the military. This time he didn't return to Switzerland because he felt he had learned all that the watch country could give him at the time. So instead of Switzerland, he moved to England, and with his wealth of experience, he landed a job at a big company where his role was mainly marketing and looking for customers daily. At this time of his lifetime, Hans met his wife, Florence Francis. After their marriage, it was no longer a question of if and when to start his business. It became a problem of capital. But sometimes the help a man needs is just right under his nose, but what can he do when he doesn't see it? That was the case of Hans Wilsdorf. One day, Hans mentioned his plan to his brother-in-law, Alfred Davis. On hearing his plan, Alfred, who was much older than him, saw the future of the business and clicked into it. From then on, Alfred and Davis entered into a partnership. In 1905, the business kick started where they named their watch company Alfred and Wilsdorf. In order to get their supplies, they partnered with a Swiss company called Hermann Igler. For a long time, they sold affordable timepieces for people, and overall, one could say their brand was thriving. However, Hans Wilsdorf discovered a pressing issue that he wanted to proffer a solution to. This observation was what gave his business its first breakthrough. Shortly after Alfred and Wilsdorf were formed, Hans noticed a particular problem. The wristwatch was mostly worn by women, and it was seen as a feminine accessory. Now you are wondering what the men were wearing. Well, the men were making use of pocket watches. As you can already tell, it wasn't a fashion item for men. At most, it was only a tool to check the time. Hans, being a businessman with foresight, knew he needed men to buy watches. More than that, he didn't like pocket watches. They were inconvenient, as one had to reach for the watch, check it, and then return it. Seeing this, he saw an opportunity and went for it. What did he do? He started making wristwatches with masculine designs. And just as he had predicted, it caught the attention of men, and soon everyone was looking to buy and own a wristwatch. It was revolutionary. No watch company had done that before, but he was just getting started. Hans kept doing his research and kept getting better at making watches. Soon the First World War started. It harmed businesses, but Alfred and Wilsdorf were not affected. Instead, Hans made use of the opportunity to sell their watches to soldiers who found them most useful in the war. By 1914, their company had over 60 employees with huge offices in strategic places in London. They were so popular and prosperous that the company won the award for the most precise chronometer in the same year. However, the business started suffering a setback after the war because a heavy tax burden was placed on businesses that export to other countries. Hans and his partner could not keep up, so they moved their business to Bienne in Switzerland. This, apart from escaping the heavy taxes, allowed them to be closer to their manufacturers. Also, this time, the company name, Alfred and Wilsdorf, had started posing a problem because of its German origin. The Americans, England, and France started expressing their dislike because of the part the Germans played in the war. This turn of events was what led to the birth of the great watch brand the world knows today. After a lot of deliberation, Hans came up with the name Rolex in 1915. He wanted something that could be pronounced easily and would mean the same thing no matter who pronounced it. That was how Rolex was born, and at this point, we must commend Hans. He was a brilliant man. Many years later, the 5-point crown that is now the Rolex trademark was formed. The trademark was always on the dial of the watches the company produced, and it made it more popular. In 1919, Rolex's headquarters was moved from Bern to Geneva, where it still is until today. The company in 1926 designed the Rolex Oysters, which was a water-resistant watch. And to prove the wonder, he had to wait for the right time to make it public. Hans's opportunity finally came in 1927, when a woman called Mercedes Glixa said she could swim across a body of water spanning 20 miles. On the set day, Hans approached the woman and convinced her to wear the Rolex Oyster. Mercedes was underwater for 10 hours, and when the watch was removed, it was intact as though it was never submerged in water. Watch lovers went wild with excitement. This made Rolex more popular, and their sales skyrocketed. One of the most interesting puzzles that has ever been solved involves a Rolex watch. It was a murder case, and it would probably have dragged on until it got cold if it wasn't for a Rolex watch. In 1996, a body was found by a fisherman in the English Channel, and the only identifiable object on him at the time was a Rolex watch. Now you can't help but marvel at how a watch could help solve murder. Well, it happened that all Rolex watches are engraved with their serial number and service markings. With this, the police were able to trace the watch to its owner, a man called Ronald Platt. Thankfully, with the quality of the watch, the police were able to discern both the date and time of death based on the watch's movements. The evidence led the police to Platt's business partner, who at the time was also a wanted criminal in Canada for fraud, theft, and money laundering. Rolex has hit many milestones, and some of them include being the first brand to make a watch that comes with a date. Not only that, it was the first watch that introduced different time zones at once, and this made it very popular with pilots and spacegoers. In addition, Rolex 2005 was the first watch company to produce a ceramic bezel that is extremely scratch-resistant. Not only does it not scratch, its color doesn't fade as a result of extended exposure. And for this reason, it has become a go-to brand for professional athletes. As of today, Rolex is known as a luxury brand made for the elites, celebrities, and those who love to go for elegance and class. Finally, Rolex, unlike other companies, cannot go public or be acquired. This was ensured by Hans before he died in 1960, when he transferred all his shares into the Wilsdorf Foundation, a charity he had established in the commemoration of his wife, who passed away a few years before him. Do you own a Rolex piece? What do you think about the brand? Let's know your opinion in the comment section below. And don't forget, follow your passion no matter what, because sky is the limit.